So we have a, thank you. In terms of agenda for today, we'll set up the background for the project. What are our proposals? What are the next steps? How we will be using your consultation feedback into the development of the project, and we'll finish with some questions. Time for question and answer. Oh, we have a first poll. Thank you, Olivier.
I think that is over to me. So beginning with the first poll, the question is, which section of the A37, A362 and A367 you normally use? So this is going to appear on your screen shortly, and you'll have the opportunity to click which of the options that best apply to you, and that will give us a little bit of an idea of where you're coming from. So if you'll just bear with me for 1 second as I launch that. Okay, so that should now all be on your screens, and there are 4 options for you to choose along the route, which will give us an idea of where you're coming from. Give you a couple of moments. Thank you. Lovely, I think that's settled down. So I'll just, cool. Okay, so the results should now be shown on your screen. So as we can see here, over 50% of you are normally using the between Oldtown and Bath City Centre, with 43% between Peasdown and St John. 21% between Farrington, Gurney and Radstock, and 14% between Whitchurch and Farrington, Gurney. Great, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next slide.
Before we progress, I just noticed that there are some comments that my mic is taking a lot of background. I appreciate that not everyone can respond, but if this is the case, is it worse I try without the mic? Nico and Ellen, I think you're probably the best to tell. Well, I'll continue and like that. And
that's clear, Myrna.
Okay. A bit of background. The map on the left identifies the study area for the project, which is really along the corridors that are being shown. So we have 3 corridors: the A37 between Whitchurch and Farrington, Gurney. Then the A362 that runs to Midsummer Norton, Westfield and Radstock. And finally the A367 that goes up through Pinsden St John, down and up to the southern entrance of the Churchill Oratory in central Bath. So why are we proposing a project along this corridor? So we have, from the previous engagement that we had 2 years ago, we understand that cars are heavily relied on by people who travel along the corridor, which has led to a significant congestion, along with related carbon emissions, noise issues, and poor air quality, particularly when we approach Bristol and Bath. And it also was noting that there are some air pollution level on some part of the route that are currently exceeding the recommended national limits. So I think it's Farrington, Gurney and Temple Cloud, which has been referenced as air quality management area. The Somer Valley is predicted to grow, and it's likely to increase the level of traffic along these corridors, and therefore this is why it's important that we address some highways improvement to make sure that, because if we do nothing, we will end up having a poor air quality and more carbon emissions along the corridor. Thank you. So this project is funded by the UK government, which aim to improve the infrastructure of the highways. And there are 2 key purposes that this program wants to address. The first one is to decarbonize transport by making the alternative to the car easier and simpler for everyone. by promoting a shift from the cars to the public transport and the active modes such as walking, wheeling, and cycling. And the second purpose is to boost the economy by increasing the opportunity for travel along the corridors. So this is where the project sits. And it's worth reminding that we have a second funding that is happening in parallel. And this is why I was saying that we are not really focusing on the bus network questions and issue in that webinar, because there is a second funding which is really here to improve the bus service network. While these two programs seem to have different objectives, it was saying that they are really dependent to each other and really relying as well onto each other, because it's by having this better infrastructure that we will have an increase in the attractivity for people to use the public transport, and then that will encourage the bus operator to invest into this network. So that was a clarification I wanted to bring, and which brings us to the second poll.
Great, thank you again, Mona. So moving on to the second poll of this evening, we're interested to know about how many of you had provided feedback or was involved in the previous phase of engagement. So the question is, did you provide feedback during our first phase of engagement held from November 2021 to January 2022? So on your screens now, that question should pop up, and a simple yes or no question. So feel free to get involved and give us an idea of how many were involved in the first phase. Thank you. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Oh, I think that's everyone. Lovely. Okay, so I'll just share the results with everyone. So at 53% yes and a 47% no. So it's about 50-50 split between those that had provided feedback in the initial stage up until now. So I think that's interesting. Thank you. So moving on to the next slide.
Thank you, Oli. So yeah, it's good to know that some half of the people took part in this previous engagement. As you say, it started at the end of 2021, and really it was the first step for us for the project team, for this project, sorry, to understand from people who know best the corridor, who are the people who travel along it, what transport issue they are experiencing and what improvement they would like to see. So we received a good level of response, a bit more than 1,000, with some suggestion for improvement. And it was a very useful feedback that helped the project team to progress in the development of the project. As I said in one of the first slides, we understand that there is a huge reliance on the car along this corridor, as 75% of the journeys are made by car. On the next slide, thank you, Marcia, you've seen it summarizes some key figure and on the finding that we have from the previous engagement. And when I said that there is a huge reliance on people using the car, there are reasons why. And we understand that the issue that people are facing are mainly the safety that was rated as poor for both cycling and pedestrian. And also the traffic flow has been rated as poor. So that's come really together because pedestrian and cyclists don't feel safe currently along the corridor because the vehicles are traveling too fast or passing too close. There is too much traffic, and they also, when they flag the safety, we understand that this is due to the lack of pavement, the insufficient number of crossing points, and also the absence of cycle lanes to have the opportunity to cycle. So that really helps us to understand what really residents would like to see. Some more frequent, more frequent busing, because obviously one of the other issues that was flagged during this previous engagement was related to the buses, with the cost of the ticket, but also the frequency and the reliability. So this feedback has helped us to define some schemes and area of improvement that we will run in the next part of the meeting. And I think we have another poll. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. So we're on to now the third poll of today. So what would be interesting is which types of transport infrastructure do you most want to see improvements to? So on your screens now, the question should pop up and the options are cycling, walking and wheeling, bus stops and mobility hub, bus lanes. So I'll give you a few seconds to pick your choices and then I'll share them amongst everyone. Thank you. Okay, I think that's starting to settle down now. It's like watching horse racing at my end. So I will just share that with everybody. So the results are with 37% walking and wheeling, at 42% cycling, then at 21% bus lanes, and then at 11% bus stops and mobility hub. Great, that's really interesting. Thank you very much. And on to the next slide.
Thanks, Ollie. So I think this is where I take over from Myrna and start to talk everyone on the call through what we're proposing as part of this project. You may have already seen some of these on the Have Your Say West website if you've been on already to have a look at that. But I think what the webinar is hopefully going to be helpful in doing is providing that context. I think Myrna's done a really great job talking us through how we've got to where we are, and setting the context for why we need to make these interventions. And what we'll do now is we'll step through each of the different types of interventions in a bit more detail, show you where we're proposing to make changes and the types of changes that we're looking for. I think it's worth saying that the real value of this consultation piece is around getting to know your views. The people who use those roads, know them the best, need to travel around the area. A lot of our thinking for developing proposals up to this point has come out of that consultation that took place in November 2021 through January 2022, as Myrna just mentioned. And that's been really helpful in helping us to draw up the proposals that we now have. And this consultation is about doing exactly the same thing. It's about bringing you some proposals. These are proposals that we've worked up with all of that knowledge, the latest guidance that we have, but they are just that, they're proposals. So we're really keen to get your feedback. What have we done well? What do you like about what we're proposing here? What could be changed? What do you think we could improve? And really, have we missed anything? Is there anything here that you feel that is completely missing from the corridor and you'd like to let us know? Absolutely nothing is set in stone at the moment. That's the whole point of having this consultation process. And we'll come on to a slide towards the end that sets out our timelines for taking designs forward, refining, updating and improving those before we then get to the next stage of maybe getting out on site. But really, these project proposals can really be framed around 4 key types of infrastructure intervention. And so just linking that back to the first slide that Myrna showed us earlier, this project and the funding that it's associated with is about delivering infrastructure that's going to help to improve movements throughout the corridors. So the first set of those is around the improvements that will help buses to move more freely. So that's bus lanes and junction upgrades. And the thinking behind that is really to improve bus journey times and to improve the reliability of those services. So dealing directly with that feedback from the first round of consultation. Improving our walking, wheeling and cycling routes. We recognise that the provision varies quite significantly across the area that we've got in scope. In some cases, it's completely absent. And a lot of it was designed quite a while ago, so it doesn't meet the current standards that we would think are good for delivering those types of infrastructure that will really encourage people to take more of their shorter journeys by walking or cycling. So that in particular, that's looking at segregated routes and making sure that we're not just segregating cyclists from cars, but we're also providing that protection to pedestrians as well. Bus stop upgrades, so going through and improving our bus stops across the region, and mobility hubs as well, which is a concept that we'll come on to and talk through what that is in a bit more detail. Next slide, please. So the aim of these proposals is obviously to help us to develop a transport system that helps us to meet our net zero aspirations. So we're under a legal obligation from the UK government to meet net zero by 2050. As a region, we're ambitious, so both Bath and North East Somerset Council and the West of England Combined Authority have aspirations to be net zero by 2030. And so we need a transport system that is actually fit for purpose and enables us to do that. So we want to provide options for people living in and working within the Somer Valley to travel sustainably, where actually using the bus or walking and cycling is a genuine option to them. It may not be at the moment. We want to make it easier to switch from one mode of transport to another. So that's maybe rather than just using the bus, it's maybe, you know, enabling those journeys to the bus stop to be taken by more sustainable modes, and having the confidence that when you get to a bus stop and wait, it's a safe environment in which to wait and potentially leave your possessions, such as a bike. We want buses to be more reliable. We want them to be quicker. Ultimately, in order to get that modal shift that we want to public transport, buses have to compete better with cars. And those cycle routes that we were just talking about, we want those to be safer and easier to use, and to create an environment where people actually want to go out and use them. Now, of course, with those benefits in mind, some of that will require some decisions around how we reuse our road space that currently exists. And in some cases, that may have some impact on local parking. Again, that's something that we're really keen to get your feedback on. We realise that's not going to be popular amongst everyone, and so we're really keen to get feedback on where you think, you know, you might have something that we want to reconsider or alternative options. Next slide, please, Marcia. So we're just going to talk through these upgrades in a particular staged process. So firstly, we're going to just show you those bus lanes and junction upgrades that we're proposing in the region. So we're proposing two brand new bus lanes. So the first of those is a northbound bus lane on the A37. I don't think I can use my pointer to show you on screen where that is, but that's the section approaching Whitchurch Village. Thank you, Marcia. That is incredibly helpful. Up to Sleep Lane Junction, and that's about helping buses to advance through that section where it is very congested in the morning peak. Similarly, we're looking at a new section of bus lane on the outbound direction from Odd Down Roundabout at the Park and Ride. And again, that's all about enabling those journeys to move more quickly out of the Park and Ride and to get down the A367 and in towards Bath more quickly. We're proposing extensions of two bus lanes that exist at the moment. Those are both within Bath itself. So the first is a very short extension on the section approaching Churchill Gyratory, carrying bus priority all the way through to the stop line. And the second is up on the Wellsway, just a bit further south, and that's extending the current inbound bus lane further up the hill to allow buses to get ahead of cars more quickly. In addition to that, we're also proposing a number of junction improvements around the region. They're all really targeted around making sure that buses can move more quickly through those locations. So by means of example, Staunton Lane Junction in Whitchurch, the A37, A39 junction at Hallertrow, and the A37, A362 junction at Farrington Gurney. We're proposing to make changes to the signals so that they include new technology that can detect a bus on approach. And when those buses are approaching, they can introduce a green wave that essentially allows the traffic to go green and allows the buses to pass through unhindered. We're also proposing a junction upgrade at Peasdown St John. So that's the A367 and Bath Road junction. That's a fairly substandard priority junction at the moment, where it's incredibly hard for buses and other vehicles to turn out from Peasdown St John onto the A367 because of the arrangement and because of the fact that traffic is travelling quite fast on the A367 past that point. So what we're proposing there is a roundabout instead of the priority junction that currently exists. and that will balance flows and provide more priority to those vehicles that are moving out of Peasdown St John. We're also aware there's a perceived safety issue there at the moment as well, and providing a modern standard junction will hopefully help to facilitate that. Next slide, please. So next we're on to walking, wheeling and cycling routes. So again, we've come up with a number of different interventions that we're seeking your feedback on across the region. And really this is about joining up links and helping people to make more sustainable travel choices who want to use their bikes. I'll just talk through the map on the left-hand side quickly because we've got a few different colours that are highlighted on there. The dark blue links that are highlighted are existing high-quality cycling provision. So, for instance, we've got the Two Tunnels Green route through Bath, and where the cursor was just now, just towards Radstock and Midsummer Norton, we've got the Midsummer Norton Radstock Greenway. They're good quality off-road cycling provision. The issue with those at the moment, among others, is that they provide good local connectivity, but they don't form that strategic network that we're keen to see across the region. And so what a lot of the schemes that we're proposing here, which are highlighted in the sort of olive yellow color, are around making those connections so that we can facilitate people accessing the corridors in a safe manner, but also providing those onward connections that are currently missing. And we'll run through what a couple of those are in a minute. There's a couple of other links that are shown on here, which are in a sort of a lighter blue, maybe call that a cyan, I'm not sure. Those are schemes that we're seeking to get your views on, but we're not proposing to deliver as part of this project. So they're ideas that people have told us might be a good thing. We don't feel that at the moment they would offer value for money, or we actually have the available budget to deliver, but we'd be interested in hearing your views as to see whether they're worth us considering in the future. So that's an extension to the NCN 24 and a link on the old railway line between Hallertrow and Midsummer Norton. So just running through these very briefly, just want to make sure we've got time for questions. Along the side of the A37, we're proposing a network of quiet routes. That's recognizing the fact that the A37 is very fast. And what we're looking to do here is use the existing road network with some minor enhancements, better wayfinding and signage, to really create a route that links up all of the communities along there. So Hallertrow, Clutton, Temple Cloud, Pensford, and provides a quiet route that cyclists can feel confident in using. From Farrington Gurney, we're proposing a shared use path along the northern side of the A362. This would connect up with Main Street in Farrington Gurney, which leads out towards the Ham Lane bus stop that currently exists there, and would provide a safe route along the A362 as far as Old Mills Lane, which is the road that comes down from Poulton that's also highlighted there. That route would essentially provide a high quality shared use space, which is significantly better than the current offering, which is essentially on road on the A362 with very fast traffic passing very closely, which isn't a safe environment and doesn't provide that feeling of safety and reassurance that many cyclists need. From Poulton, we've got a link highlighted just coming south there. That is Old Mills Lane. And what we're proposing there is a quiet route, which would essentially be stopping up that link to general traffic. Landowners would still have access, but would provide a quiet route for users from Poulton to access the A362 and make their journey onward to Farrington Gurney, or indeed onward to Midsummer Norton. Towards Midsummer Norton itself, we're not proposing infrastructure between Old Mills Lane and Thicketmead roundabout at the moment. The reason for that is we're very aware that there's a separate set of interventions that are planned by the Summer Valley Enterprise Zone. And whilst we're a completely separate project from them, we don't want to be trying to deliver something that another project may deliver as well in a similar time frame. So we're joined up and we're aware of what they're doing, but we're not seeking to deliver something separate from them. Within Midsummer Norton itself, there's 2 cycle routes that we've highlighted there. So that's Midsummer Norton and Westfield, and that's delivering the 2 routes that were set out in the local cycling, walking and investment plan. So that's a policy that was adopted a few years ago by the West of England Combined Authority. And there's a number of upgrades proposed there along Silver Street, for instance, and Charlton Road, which will hopefully provide safer routes for the nearby Charlton School. And then finally, a couple of heading up the A367 corridor. So from Peasdown St John, we're looking to make access down to the NCN 24 safer. So we're proposing 2 quiet routes along Braesdown Lane and through Shoscombe. And those would essentially be providing better passing places and providing better signed routes for cyclists to access the NCN 24 and be able to access Radstock, Midsummer Norton on a much quieter route than the existing A367. Finally, just coming to the north, we're proposing a new segregated cycling facility on the eastern side of the Wellsway. That would be delivered by reallocating some of the highway space, so taking out one of the general traffic lanes. And that the intention there is to provide a really high quality bi-directional cycle route between Midford Road and Hatfield Road, where there'd then be opportunities to tie in with NCN 24. And to actually use that as an opportunity to sort of improve the sense of place as well. So the barrier between the road and the cycle lane, for instance, we hopefully be able to do some planting in there and make that a nice green area. So again, this is all about making sure that we've got opportunities across the region for safer cycling and walking, improving those opportunities for people to be active. And again, we've got the great Active Way project that's happening separately in the Midsummer Norton, Westfield and Radstock area. And hopefully it will enable us to provide those facilities that really are lacking at the moment and provide that cohesive network that the region needs. Next slide, please, Marcia. Bus stop upgrades. So we're looking here to upgrade a number of bus stops across the 3 corridors. We're aware that a number of the bus stops that exist at the moment are quite aged. They are maybe simply bus flags and don't offer any protection or shelter from the rain or other inclement weather. So we're looking to upgrade bus shelters on both sides of the roads at each of these locations. We're looking to make sure that those are up to the latest standards. They would include real-time information on a digital travel screen. They would have better improved pavements, step-free curbs, so that we can improve the accessibility of those, so that users aren't having to, with mobility issues, aren't having to navigate drop curbs. They have a level access, and we're looking at potentially providing improved crossings as well. There's a number of these locations in the area where you deboard or disembark from a bus, and actually to cross the road, there's no safe provision at all, and you end up having to run across the road. So looking at providing improved crossings facilities is key to this. And there's a number that you can see there around the corridor. So this is all about making it safer to catch a bus, whatever age range you're in, and to make it all those better facilities that will help to make people feel safer. Mobility hubs. So these are really a quite new intervention in the West of England region. These are about taking existing bus stops where we know there is sufficient demand, but where there's also an opportunity to improve how people use these facilities and how they access them. So it's all about making the way that people switch between different modes much easier. At the moment, it can be quite difficult to access bus stops. If you want to do that by a sustainable means, it can be quite a walk. It's not a rare occurrence to have to walk 20, 30 minutes in the area to actually be able to access a bus stop. And it's about being able to be confident that if you were to cycle to the bus stop, for instance, you can leave your bike there in the knowledge that it will be there when you come back and it won't have been damaged. So we're looking at a variety of interventions along these locations, which would take all of what we've just mentioned on the previous slide about bus stop upgrades, but also look to provide cycle parking. So that could be short-term cycle parking in the sort of standard Sheffield stands that you see around some of our urban areas at the moment. So you might feel confident in using those for a short-term lockup. But also about looking at the opportunity to provide secure cycle lockers where you can physically lock your bike away for the day and be safe that it will be there when you come back 8, 9, 10 hours later when you've been into Bath for your, or Bristol or across the Summer Valley for your commute or for a long leisure trip. Additionally, we'd be looking to provide repair stands and pumps. That's sort of maybe some repair tools, Allen keys on chains, and providing pumps so that if you get a puncture en route or your tire is deflated, you can make sure that you've got a facility to pump that up before you then travel home. So again, you've just got that confidence that the facilities are going to work and be there for you. Those interchanges as well in the future, they could hopefully include e-scooters and the new offering that will come forward from the latest micro-mobility studies across the west of England. And they also provide hopefully a better opportunity to interchange with the Westlink DRT service onto regular buses. Next slide, please. So we appreciate that's a lot of information. Where does this all go next? So to say we're really keen to get your views on this consultation. This is really about making sure that we have got everything covered. Where we've got things wrong potentially, we can address that in the next phase of design development. We can take all the feedback on board. And then what we will be doing is working through a process during 2024 where we'll be taking all of the comments that we've gathered from the consultation, comments from other technical reviews, some of the modelling that we're doing at the moment to see how these proposals work, and just to verify that what we have come up with as proposals actually do work operationally. And we'll be using that to refine the design as we go forward. So we expect that to take place in early to mid 2024. Once that's done, we'll come back with another set of updated proposals. And again, we will be putting those out to the public for further consultation. So really, as we have done with the first stage of consultation, we're really keen to take on board as many ideas as possible and make sure that we're getting these interventions right. That would then conclude at the end of 2024. And then hopefully we'll be able to start a period of mobilisation of contractors and get construction started towards the end of 2025. And hopefully our interventions in place to use in the following year. Next slide, please, Marcia. So I think that's everything we wanted to share with you today. But as I say, we're really keen to have this opportunity now for you to pose your questions and for us to answer them. So I think we'll invite those questions. So I think, Helen, is that over to you?
Yes, I am. I'm going to be question master. I'm going to be take over in this session. So thank you all for sticking with us for our presentation, and thank you for your pre-submitted questions, as well as all the questions that have been submitted in the chat. While both Nick and Myrna have been providing us with that really useful presentation. I'll be putting the questions to the panelists now, including myself. But just to confirm, if we don't have time to answer all of the questions in our session today, we'll be putting the responses to those questions on our FAQs on the website. And if you signed up for updates on the website, you will get an email when it's updated. So I just want to be, I know there's been a couple of questions come in just to say, how we're going to be transparent about answering our questions. So I just wanted to capture that. Also, someone might want to take over me to make sure I say this correctly, but if there's any questions that relate to the bus service improvement plan, there is a separate email address that we can share for that. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, yes. So we'll share that after, either in the chat or after the meeting.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, I will start running through the pre-submitted questions. Do apologise. I may choose to just paraphrase some or group some together just so that we can get through as many as we can. So the first one was just around about will we be able to hold the bus operator first group to account so that they provide services along the corridor, and also what discussions are happening with Somerset Council about these transport corridors under the bus service improvement plan, and of course with Bristol City Council for their end of the scheme.
I think this would be one of the questions that we will take separately, Ellen, in
Okay.
this one, and actually the second one as well. It was we received. We treat that separately.
Okay. Well, thank you for having submitted that questions. You'll be receiving a separate response to that one. We've had a number of questions around the old railway line in Clutton, and the potential of using that as a route, and why can't it be used to form a cycle path towards Pensford. It's something that we've undertaken a feasibility study on, but as part of that desktop study, we've identified it would become a considerable cost, and also we are at the moment we're unsure of whether the existing viaduct would be structurally sound and structurally safe to take the route. So at this current time, it doesn't form part of this scope. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything further to that.
No, I think that's a good answer, Helen. I was just going to say that the other thing we should reference here is that in terms of the constraints of the funding that we have to deliver the project, we have to have delivered by March 2027, and I think a lot of the work we'd need to do on the Pensford Viaduct, for instance, would be, there's land questions that we'd have to take, and a lot of the surveys we'd need to do, and to make sure that it's structurally sound would potentially take us outside of that funding envelope timescales, and that's another reason why this project won't necessarily be able to deliver that at this point in time.
Thank you, Nick. I'll move through the questions. So next one we have is just commenting that the Radstock outlying villages are poorly covered by public transport, and many commuters to Bath are using Radstock as an official park and ride, causing problems with on-street parking. Just questioning what solutions are available to assist with this.
Thank you, Ellen. That's a question related to the bus services, and the Westlink, the answer that we get from the team who is working on that is that the Westlink operates in this area and is able to connect people from villages to the main corridor to enable onward journey to Bath. Also, the development of the transport hub will make for a more attractive environment to make the change between services possible. So that would be something that we hope Westlink could address.
Just moving on to the question, we've received a number of questions around the vision, the concept designs we've put forward for the Wellsway. There's a number of concerns around the parking provision and the loss of parking provision along that section of the corridor. The impact on those properties with accesses and egresses. So I think one point of assurance is that that we wouldn't be looking to stop any property or any residents from accessing and egressing their properties on there. It's currently at a concept design stage, and we really are putting the design out there to get comments on it. As Nick has said, we're really keen to understand whether it's something that is palatable, whether the residents would want to take place, and if not in its current form, how we could amend the design and alter the design to best suit both the users and residents in the area. So we acknowledge that there would be some parking loss that would occur as part of the current design. We've looked to accommodate that parking in other areas. We also, from our desktop studies and our site visit, acknowledge that there is some capacity currently on the Wellsway, so there is the possibility for bays to be relocated, but we are kind of committing that if this design should move to the next stage of development, we would want to undertake parking services in the area to fully understand that issue. A question has been raised about, as I say, about access and egresses. I'm going to assure that we wouldn't be looking to stop any residents from accessing their properties along the corridor. Just running through some of the other Wellsway questions. happy for my panelists to jump,
I
my other colleagues to jump in.
No, it's fine. Thank you, Helen. I think that's a really good summary of it. You know, we've got quite a lot of questions on this, obviously, and you know, it's clear there's a lot of questions around that, which maybe, you know, the materials online don't necessarily fully answer. But this is exactly the reason that we're out for consultation. I say, just what I would say is we're being quite transparent that the current designs do show that reduction of parking by 37 spaces on the Wellsway. The designs at the moment that we have, we've tried to re-provide as much of that as possible, but you know, we're conscious that some of that is moving it from one side of the road to the other or to other locations. And part of the reason for that is, you know, we've put in place in that design, you know, a fully segregated cycling route all the way along the eastern side, but we've also extended the bus lane on the inbound to Bath side. Now, we've got various bits of evidence that we're using in order to help shape these designs. So we have what we call AVL data, that's automatic vehicle locator data from buses. That's essentially the GPSs. So we can see where buses are getting held up in queues and how long they're taking to travel through a particular section. So we know there are some issues on the Wellsway with that. What I would say, obviously, is we've put in those designs at the moment sort of what we feel are the extents of what could be delivered there. It's still all subject to traffic modelling. So at the moment we are going through a process very much in parallel with what we're doing now and showing you the designs of seeing what the impact of these proposals is when we put them into a traffic model and forecast that forward with the expected growth in population, trip making, and seeing what impact that has in terms of the operational efficiency of the network and what sort of modal shift we expect these changes might lead to. So there's a lot of work that we're still doing there to formulate the evidence base. And obviously, in all of the comments that we've got here are really helpful in helping us to shape where we take that design in the future. As Helen, you've already mentioned, anyone who has existing garages leading out the Wellsway clearly would, you know, be maintaining access to those. But yeah, I think hopefully just to provide some reassurance that this isn't set in stone, and we are doing all the background modelling and evidence base to lead to that. And exactly as you said, we are looking to, you know, if this advances to the next stage, undertake those parking surveys to understand what the impact could be of up to 37 spaces going.
I'm going to move forward through. I think it's fair to say that we've covered off most of the Wellsway comments. Sorry, Myrna, I'll let you go.
Yeah, no, I think that's, thank you, Helen. I think you cover a lot of responses related to the Wellsway. And I also noticed that there was a question saying, can we have a meeting on the Wellsway? And I just wanted to remind that we have a drop-in event scheduled on, I think, on the 19th of July in St. Luke's Church. So it's relatively close to the Wellsway, and would be really keen to meet you and talk more about the proposal. And I think that cover somehow the question on the Wellsway. Thank you, Helen. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I think it's really, I'd seen that come up in the chat. I think it's really, yeah, be a good opportunity for residents or locals to come in and discuss any concerns or any other ideas, in fact, for the area. It'd be useful to hear from the residents. I'm going to move forward to a question that we've had about the potential traffic-free route from Peasdown to Odddown using the old Fossway. This comment that the route would be invaluable for those wishing to commute and travel to and from the Odddown side of Bath. Whilst they think it would be a hilly route, they think with the high usage of e-bikes for commuting, it might not be so much an issue, and questions whether this could be considered for a feasibility study. I think that's probably one for Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. I think on that one, I think yeah, clearly what we've got in the consultation at the moment in terms of the proposals, we are looking at improving the cycling facilities all the way through there in terms of a strategic piece. But obviously, that route of getting you into the Bath at the moment that we showed on the map earlier is via the two tunnels route, which does take you some way out of the way and doesn't provide necessarily the most direct route between Peasdown, St John and Bath. and clearly we want to improve the facilities on the A367. So you know, we're proposing the mobility hub upgrades at Odd Down Park and Ride, for instance, which would make that a better location for cyclists. We're proposing the improvements on the Wellsway, as we've just talked through. And we really see those as being the first steps in making that a much better corridor. I guess in terms of where we next go, any further work that we'd have to look at would be looking at doing an options appraisal and taking all potential options forwards. That could be a route along the A367 for cyclists, or it could be, as the suggestion is, you know, maybe looking at that Old Fossway in the future. We don't have any projects in place that are looking at that at the moment, but it's certainly something we can take into consideration when we get on to, well, what's the next phase of looking at how we can improve cycling through here.
Moving on now to another one of our pre-submitted questions. So this was asking specifically around why we only choose to look to review 2 bus stops in Peasdown. I think it's probably more of a more general question around why the specific bus stops were chosen. So at our previous stage of works, we undertook an audit of all the bus stops along the study corridor, and we carried out review of the data on bordering and alighting. We're obviously working within constraints on funding, so we've had to prioritise locations where the demand was highest, and we felt that the improvements were most needed and deliverable. So that's just kind of a wider response to that piece as to why we've chosen the bus stop locations and the mobility applications that we have. Just moving through, I think we're probably starting to move on now to coming to the end of our pre-submitted questions there. Moving on to now to some questions that we've had actually in our chat around. So the first one is around the survey that took place in 2021-2022. Some comment that they weren't aware of the survey and they didn't receive an invite. No, that was publicised online and it was publicised in the area. And then I think we have a little more background as to that consultation.
Excuse me, and this was a question for me.
Yes, just around someone questioning around the form that the previous consultation took. Well,
I was not here at the time, but I think it was a survey that was circulated online through the Travel West web page, and it was really about understanding what were the habits of the people who are traveling a lot along the corridor, what type of transport they are using, what are the issues, and they had the opportunity to comment on an interactive map showing some potential improvement they would like to see.
Thank you, Myrna. I'll move on to one of our other ones that's come in our live chat. So we've had a number of questions about the corridors that link into this, so the sections that run into Bristol primarily, and a number of questions about that section. Obviously that falls outside of the scope of this work, so I wonder if we can advise where we might be able to obtain the people listening in might be able to obtain information around the other corridors. I believe that's coming to consultation shortly.
Thanks, Helen. Yeah, I must admit, I think that's the section that's in the Bristol City Council area. I believe it is coming to consultation shortly. Hopefully what we can do is we can provide a contact address following this for the programme team at the West of England Combined Authority and Bristol City Council if there are detailed questions on that. I'm afraid I'm not fully linked into that as a Baines employee, no. So apologies.
No, that's fine. I think it was more just about reassuring that, unfortunately, as I say, unfortunately not in a position to answer questions on them, but we can provide you with a contact in so that you can find, hopefully, get the information that you need. And the same discussions at the other end of the corridor about liaising with Somerset Council at the other end of the corridor. Then there's another question, are these plans along the A362 coordinated with the proposals for the Summer Valley Enterprise Zone? I think it's fair to say that as a team we are working with the Summer Valley Enterprise Zone team to ensure that our schemes work together as best they can.
Yeah, I think if just to add to that, we're definitely talking to the Summer Valley Enterprise Zone team to make sure that our schemes are coordinated. What we don't want to happen is for us to deliver one standard of cycle route, for example, between Farrington Gurney and Old Mills Lane, and then for something completely different to be delivered the other side. They've got to have very consistent design language insofar as we can, to make it as easy as possible for users to make their journeys along it. I think there was a separate question that I did see in the chat aligned to this around would there be a potential for delivery at the same time as Summer Valley Enterprise Zone, should that get its separate permissions that it requires to go forward? And I think the answer to that is that clearly the two projects have separate decision-making processes, so we can't prejudice what would happen on either of them. But if they were both to line up and get permissions, then yes, we would look to coordinate delivery so that we're not digging up the road in quick succession. You know, we'd want to create efficiencies for delivery there and minimize any disruption to users of the A362.
Just running through some of the other questions that we've received. I've had a number of questions just around the specification for the bus shelters and the mobility hubs. We're very aware of the bus shelter work currently being undertaken by the Combined Authority, and we'll look to align any of our designs with the standard currently being produced by the Combined Authority alongside the local authorities. Provide that reassurance, as Nick says, that consistency of design across all of the corridors. We've only got a couple of minutes left. Let's see if we can get one last question. I don't know if any of my panelists can see one that's gone unanswered. I think perhaps I wanted to finalise with it. So how will issues and questions put forward have your, say, website be addressed? Will there be a database to show all of the questions that have been captured by the project and what's being done about them?
Yes, and we will aim to publish the result of the consultation later this year, once we have been able to populate everything, and hopefully you will find the information you need with regard to your feedback. I think there are quite a lot of questions here on the Wellsway that we have already answered, or we'll have more opportunity to talk about it later on, but looking at the chat. I think, should we close the session at this point now for today? It's only 1 minute. Oh yeah, there is one last poll. That was the good timing. Thanks, Oli.
Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us for the end of the session. It's the last poll that we have today is really for our benefit, so we can understand a bit more about what you're expecting in the webinar, basically. So I'll just launch this now. So if you can, please pick honestly which one of the three answers best fits you. I think if we can just skip through to the final slide now, and we'll just leave this running whilst we do any last remarks, I think. So thank you very much, and I'll leave it to the panel if they have any last comments to make as we draw the session to a close.
I was just going to say, apologies, Myrna, if you're about to talk, I was just say thanks everyone for your interest today. As I say, we're really keen. Part of the Bath and North East Somerset Council approach is that we want to give people a bigger say, and we really do want to hear your feedback on this. We will go through all the questions that have been asked in the chat. We've tried to address as much of those as possible, but if we haven't done, we will respond to you. So please do put anything else in the chat that you have now before this webinar closes. But yeah, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you taking time out of your evening.
Thanks, Nick. I have nothing to add. That's absolutely, I completely agree. And we're really looking forward to meet you in one of our in-person events if you have the opportunity to join. It will be even nicer and put some faces on comment. So thank you all for joining tonight. And I don't know if we have the response from the poll. That would be, it would become later, and that's.
So I've just shared the response rate. So 85% of people felt that they had most of the information they needed. 8% and 8% either way as well. So it feels like the majority of people got a fair amount of information. And again, thank you for everybody who have been sitting through the presentation and also submitting comments and selections through the polling system. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a nice evening.